Okay, this is all about showing detail. Now, this particular shot was taken with. I'm just looking at this settings up here. It's not really important to what you are doing, but this aperture here, which is a high aperture, by the way. Low numbers are high aperture. And what's happening with this is it's giving this depth of field effect. It's blurry at the back here or up the top, and it's sharp at the front here. So if you were to use something like this document, and this is kind of a tricky one. I mean, I'd be more inclined to sort of suggest to you that you should be photographing this rather than doing it this way. But I'll show you how to do it this way anyway. To make your when you put your design into Photoshop to create that sort of blur effect from there down to the sharp of the corner there. Now this is the logical way to use this is that you should be only using this for detail. I mean, if you've got a fairly blank page and there's not really much happening, there's no real reason to sort of to do that. So I'm going to open this up, of course. That's just the raw, and I'm going to open this up, and there it is in all its glory. Soft up the top, sharp at the corner there, and I mean the example I'm going to show you is going to be the cover. Let me just see here. I don't have the cover itself on this document, so I'm going to have to open it up again. And let's just open this up, and I'm just going to open up and use this particular page here. Logically, it doesn't work for it. Realistically, it doesn't work, but just for this example, I'm going to do it. So, same as before. The only difference with this, let me just go back into the other document. The only issue with this, by the way, is that we don't have a reference for the end of the page here, and because of this, I'm going to do the same thing as I did before in Illustrator and get a grid happening, perspective grid happening for this. So again, I'm just going to take a screenshot of this. I'm going to go back into Illustrator. Here's the other one. Just hit New Document and wait. Come on. And then place that screenshot, which should be the second one. It's starting to slow down. Illustrator seems to slow down more than Photoshop for some reason. I do not know why, but anyway, we'll get there. So I'm placing that. It's a bit big, so I'm just going to reduce that down again, and then just lock it down. So lock that down. Now, pen tool again. I'm going to make sure that I don't have fill happening, but just have stroke. I'm going to start where I perceive to be the corner to be, and I'm just going to click and drag there, and then I'm just going to go straight away to the corner there, and then just very simply drag my handle out. So that's doing that. Let me just zoom in a bit so I can actually see that I'm doing a fairly accurate job. And of course, what I should also be doing is just sizing that down. So yeah, it's pretty good. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Now, the problem is, of course, up the top. What do we do with the top? Where is the top, in fact? So this is going to take a bit of guesswork, but I'm going to sort of start up here, and I'm going to go and sort of draw a curve there, and I'm going to go to about that point there. And, you know, I can make some adjustments to this or whatever, but it's not so important that you get this right, because so long as there is, by the way, that there's actually a bow at the top, not the other way around, down underneath like that, that doesn't work. So it needs to be like that, and it may be that it's a bit closer to that, but it really doesn't matter, to be honest with you. It's all about sort of, you know, where you perceive this thing to be, and what will happen, of course, after this is it will be fine anyway. So I've got my two paths. I select both those paths, and I go into the blend tool again, and I click on two corresponding points to get my blend happening. There it is. That's looking pretty good. Again, there's no sort of reference to what's happening up the top there, so it just looks natural. So let's now grab hold of that, copy that I should say, go back into Photoshop and paste that in, of course, paste as pixels, and I'm going to enlarge, so I'm just going to align that up to there first, and again it may take a couple of goes to get this right. And I'm looking at sort of aligning from the obviously from the fold there, from the fold to the edge, and I mean there we go. That's doing a pretty good job, isn't it? It's just a bit excuse me. It's just a bit big, so yeah, I just need to bring that down to about there. I reckon that's pretty good. Do I move that up and down? Yeah, I'll just move that down a bit so that's aligning to that point there. I'm pretty happy with that. So with that in mind, now we get the actual page itself. So let's go back to this, and again, it's similar sort of situation to before. I need to figure out where halfway is. You can actually see where halfway is, so I probably don't need to worry about that. So let's grab a selection. Let's go to the edge now. Got to be a bit careful about this one because it's not all white. So I'm just make sure that I'm inside and I'm not sort of selecting that dashed line there to represent the two sides, the two pages. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to cut that again. Cut's better than copy. You know you've done it. And now, well, you know, I've just realized I've got to create a path for this as well. So let me pause this. I'll create a path for this and I'll come back. So here's my path, and again I've just sort of done a bit of guesswork at the top there. I'm not forgetting that obviously I've got to be careful about that sort of bowing up there and upwards. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's now, it's in the path menu itself, so let's call it, I'm just going to call it cover. I mean, you know, whatever you want to call it. And go OK to that. Now, go back a stage. I'm going to hold down my command key and load that selection. And that original one I copied should be there, so let's go into special, oh no, it's not there, sorry, oh dear. Let's go back to the front cover again. Oh, I closed the stupid thing. I must have copied at some stage. Let me pause, won't be a sec. Here we go, so edit, special, what am I doing wrong? I think what I'm doing wrong here is I'm in the paths palette. Let me just go back to layers, and I know that I want to paste this below the grid there. That's the grid, by the way. Let me just turn this off and on to make sure that that is the actual grid. So now if I hit Command-Option-Shift-V to paste into, it should be good. Now I've just realized that this is too small. This is way too small for this particular example. So I'm going to open up that that report again, and this is too small here. So I'm going to just enlarge this. I'm just going to have a guess. Just take that up to 560, say, for instance. And let's try selecting that again. Let me just make sure I'm inside there, and then I'm not going beyond that dashed line, and then I cut that out again. That's looking pretty good. So paste into again, paths, load that as a selection, deselect the path, go back into this and make sure I'm on the right layer, Command-Option-Shift-V. Is it bigger? Oh no. Sorry guys, let me get this the right size. Okay, third time lucky. Yeah, right, that's good, that's fine. Alright, so I drag this round, and what I want to do now is exactly as I did before, essentially, but I will turn my grid on so I can actually see what's going on. And again, it's going to have to be a bit of guesswork with this as well. So I can drag my corners to, well, I can drag two corners, but I'm just going to have to guess again where the corner is for the rest of this. Now, this is how distorted this actually is. And remember, if I go back to Illustrator, that this is just slightly above there. There it is there as well. So I'm sort of doing the same thing. I'm just going to go to about that point there. Let me just quickly refer back to that. It's about that angle. I'm not doing the curve just yet. And as you can see, that's doing a pretty good job of that. So now, right mouse button, warp. And this is where I need to do exactly as I did before. Wow, that just moved for some reason. That's really weird. Make this warp into place. So as you can see there, let me zoom in a bit closer so we can actually see this properly. It's aligning imagination. That's looking pretty good there. I'm not going to touch the top because it's kind of a bit nondescript, but if you have detail at the top there, you might have to sort of click and drag that a little bit. Again, I'm not going to do that because I'm pretty happy with that. So let's hit return to confirm that that's fine, and let's turn our perspective grid off. And let's now obviously use multiply to make that sort of work with the background. And as you can see, it's working. There's probably a bit of an issue with the right hand side there. I would probably have to go in there, and you can see it's just a simple change because the path is there, because the selection is there. I'm just dragging that ever so slightly off to the left hand side, and that's now fitting perfectly in there. And again, that's distorting perfectly, nicely. But the problem we've got is, of course, that we have a blur happening there. Now I'm just going to briefly pause again, come back to you and show you what to do next. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to duplicate this layer. Actually, before I do, I'm going to label this sharp. and I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to call this blurred. With that in mind, turn that off, and I'm kind of what I'm looking at is literally what's happening with this blur up the top here. I want to simulate that blur there. So to do that, I just have to have a bit of a guess. So let me just sort of move up to this point here, turn that off and on again, and go into the filter menu, and Gaussian blur it is. So go to blur, Gaussian blur, or Gaussian blur, depending on where you how you want to call it, and 0.5 is too small. I'm just going to drag that up to, say, 5, and you can see here that it's doing a pretty good job of blurring, but what it's not doing, which is rather unfortunate, is it's because this mask is still there, it's not blurring the edge, so that's a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do is click on the mask itself and drag it down to the trash and get rid of it by saying apply, because I don't want that to delete and it won't make that mask. So with that in mind, go back to blur, Gaussian blur again, or Gaussian blur, and then try that that blur, and as you can see there, it's doing a much better job of blurring that. What it's also doing, by the way, is blurring the bottom, and this is the trick. I want the top blur but not the bottom, and that's why I have these two separate layers here. It's just got okay to that, by the way. Now what we want to do is add another layer mask to this layer, and this time we're going to use the gradient. Now with gradient you can see mine set black to black, which is a bit annoying, so I don't want to do that. I'm resetting that black to white. And the one I'm going to use is black to white, not black to transparent. Black to white's the one to use here. So where I click first is going to be a total deletion, so I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to start down here and drag up. Where I'm letting go, as you can see, that's the original image there, but it's obviously blending away there to nothing. If I turn this one on though, you can see what's happening here now is that this one, which is, let me just turn this off again, there's the image, the mask is deleting the bottom part down there where it starts to sharpen, and therefore of course revealing the other layer there. That's how you get that effect. Now I'm just looking at this again, and I'm kind of thinking that it could even be blurred even more. So this is the cool thing about it. That mask still remains. I can go back into the filter Gaussian blur again, and by the way I held down my option key to get that again to reset it, and I can just apply a thicker, not a thicker, more of a blur to it. Oh, and I guess I think that was too much of a blur. It's just disappearing now. That's the problem with it. So I think this, you can only go so far with this basically. You can see that it's blurring there, but any further than that, it's just not. It's just going to sort of disappear altogether. So, in a nutshell, that's how you can get something like this to work, and it's sort of a simulated photographic process. Again, I would recommend that you photograph these things rather than mock them up in Photoshop. The final thing, by the way, with all these things, as I mentioned in a couple of the other videos, is to flatten this completely. So I'm just going to flatten now. I mean, maybe save a copy and flatten, because you might want to use this again. So flatten image is fine. And then go through the steps of applying noise to this again. So noise, add noise, and then I've already got the set to the one that I used before, which is 3 on a uniform monochromatic. And that will create a nice sort of natural noise effect to it, which makes it look as though it's part of the photograph. There you go. Hope that helps.